on today. I want to say here in San Jose, it is nice and cool day. It's going to be a great day. We had a few warm days earlier this week, went up into the 80s. It felt so cool to go outside, start putting shorts on and stuff like that. So, if you're out there, tell me, where are you coming from? Where are you signing on today? Um, and while we let some folks join us, why don't I tell you some exciting news that's going on my side of the leadership world? Tonight, I'm flying out to the East Coast. In fact, I didn't even pack yet. I have to do that. I'm going to be leading a private CEO mindset workshop for an executive team of a massive global shipping and logistics organization. Think oceans and vessels and ports, the kind of supply chain influence that affects entire industries. No, this isn't a real problem for them. They're senior leaders, many of them 20 years in their roles and more, but we're being challenging them to shift the way they lead because our world has changed. We have to be more adaptable, quicker, and not just functionally, but strategically, because this is the next phase of leadership. It's not about managing your area, your silo, your department. It's about thinking like a CEO of your domain. We're going to be doing bold work, reframing leadership around ownership, not just delivery, designing personal CEO playbooks, and running some hot seat challenges where they have to double value in their area fast. So, I want to tell you, if your team is stuck in execution mode or playing it safe, and you want them thinking like strategic operators, not just task machines, come talk to me, DM me, drop me an email. We can bring this experience to your org. I want to say hello to Antoinette, who's also in San Jose. Thank you for saying hello. If you're out there, come tell us where you're coming from. What's the weather going on? What's your biggest leadership challenge? So let's get back to today's topic. Today's topic. Are you actually accidentally training your team to delay projects? Drop drop a thumbs up or drop something in the comments here in the chat if this sounds familiar. You launch a new strategy, a new project, a new way to get things done in your organization. And the team all smiles and nods. And then, boom, they invent three new blockers before the meeting is even really kicked off. If I had $1 for every fake blocker I've seen, I wouldn't be live streaming this from my home office drinking a cup of tea. I'd be streaming from a private island, sipping something with a tiny umbrella in it. I just finished prepping for this leadership workshop I just talked about. And guess what? Similar patterns happen there too. The bigger the project, the louder the hesitation. My question to you is this: are you actually blocked or just scared to move? One leader told me, I'm grasping because these projects are so much bigger. You feel the weight, uh, the fear of failing, fear of not being trying and seeing things, the fear of visibility, scope not being there. Today's real question is, are you actually blocked? Or is your culture accidentally taught your team to stall the second things get uncomfortable? Interesting question. Is your culture to stall when it gets uncomfortable? So let's break it down. Is this a real block or is this just fear in a strategy hat? A block is real. When it's happening, budgets freeze, let's see, regulatory shutdowns, that's a block. You literally can't move forward. You have to figure something out. You have to get around something. That is a block. Risk is something else. Risk is something we imagine. It might happen. It could hurt us. It's fear in a PowerPoint costume, right? We put that fear up on a slide. It looks so real, like we can't move forward. Well, what if this happens? And we can't do that because you have these people here. I can't tell you how many times we have these conversations. And even though 80% of the path is good, and we're talking about the little corner cases that might happen, could happen, might happen, but very rarely. So, what I coach is this: a block versus a risk. A block is something already in your way. You can't move. It's not an impediment, it's a block. A risk might happen someday. A block stops progress right now. A risk makes you hesitate. A block needs action right now. Risk needs a conversation, not a halt. Block is reality. Risk is anxiety in a strategy hat. So let's take this a little bit deeper. What does this actually mean? Let's take a simple tool to pilot risks or plot risks on two axes. One is likelihood, and we would measure that just low, medium, high. What's the real reality that this might happen? It's low, or yeah, this is really going to happen. The other side is the impact. If it does happen, how bad is it? Measure that, low, medium, high. So now you have a filter. If things are down in the corner and the likelihood is low, and even if it did happen, the impact is low, what are you going to do? You're going to stop everything for that? So you create a matrix, you can compare the risks and decide which ones you need to work on. Low, low, yeah, we're not going to do much there. High, high, that's your priority. You need to plan for it, mitigate it, and watch for the signals. The middle, right? You're going to want to know signals. You're going to want to have a plan in place in case if it happens, and just watch it. This is isn't just adults doing strategy. This is how leaders make decisions without stalling, without the creation of a blocker that we have to stop everything. That's the difference. So we get to prioritize things. So let's talk about the real villain here. The biggest thing that you have to worry about is fear. Fear is the biggest blocker of them all. Fear kills decision making. It kills budget. It freezes it. Red tape more than anything else does. And fear is often hidden. I talk about fear in leadership to many of my clients, some talks that I've given, some keynotes, and I divide it into four different areas. There is the fear of incompetence. That is what we often call the imposter syndrome. This is where confidence is missing. Leaders then tend to wait for perfect information before making a move, a delay that crushes progress. I've seen companies ping pong between different projects half started because they can't make decisions. So they do something else in the meantime while they're gathering information, and then they come back to another one. So a lot of things are in flight, ping ponging around, but we're not really getting much done. Um, we have a saying to stop starting and start finishing, right? And this is what happens a lot in this mode. So if you see this happening, this is probably because somewhere there is that imposter syndrome going on, delaying things. The thing is this: you're teaching your team, the whole organization that's under you. It could be a few people, it could be a few hundred people. But what you're teaching them is a culture of indecision, a culture of having to wait. You're building not decision making makers, but you're building inactive decision makers. The second fear is what I named the fear of appearing foolish, right? So if we're have this fear that we're going to be foolish if we say we're going to do something, we cling more to conservative, tried and true methods. We point to stated processes. We point to industry standards, industry benchmarks, and right, we do it that way because we know it works. Your creativity flatlines. No innovation, no creativity. Um, and just because we want to point to things that are industry best practices. If you heard me talk about industry best practices before, it's interesting. I think those best practices are great. It helps a lot of people. The problem is this: if you want to be in the middle of the pack, industry standards are great. Best practices are great because the leaders already figured it out and they're already doing something even better. If you want to live in the fear of appearing foolish, yep, best practices is where you want to be. And you're building a culture of copy and paste leadership. You're building a culture of conservative, no innovation, no creativity. The third one is the fear of failure. This often starts early. Maybe it's when you came home with your first bad report card. So in organizations, it might show up a little bit differently. I see it in many, many organizations pushing decisions upward or outward, pushing decisions in a way that if it flops, you can say, it wasn't my call. You're building a culture of blame, of finger pointers, of I don't make decisions, I push it over there and I blame them when it doesn't work. And I'll tell you something else: because we're pushing the decisions, they're not even bought into them. So they may be working them half heartedly. The fourth one is the fear of vulnerability. Um, no one wants to be seen as unknowing. um, fearful. So they put up this metaphorical armor in meetings, things bounce off. It shuts down to openness. It doesn't allow you to see people to see who you are, your authenticity. How many times have you seen a situation with a coworker where they're completely different at work than they are at home? Totally unauthentic at work, right? This actually builds a culture of mistrust because people see through that. So you have fear of incompetence, which we call imposter syndrome, fear of appearing foolish, fear of failure, fear of vulnerability. Um, Let me say hello to a few people. Laura Bailey, you're from Vegas. Thanks for coming in. Warren, we haven't chatted in a long time. How's Boston? Is it still chilly and cold? I hope all the snow is gone. Pablo, Mexico City, welcome. I'm glad to have you all here. What do you think? What are the fears in your organizations and how do they show up? All these fears are subtle, but they're very powerful. If left unchecked, they turn your team into professional avoiders, professional but what ifers. So, if fear drives your decision making, the less leadership actually happens. What do you think? The more fear drives your decision making, the less leadership happens. You think that's true? Let me know. Put something in the comments. But I can tell you this from my experience. When fear runs the show, strategy is sacrificed for safety. Innovation gets smothered, and your smartest people learn to wait instead of lead. I have a guy that I know, um, part of a bigger company. He said that, you know, I created a phantom blockers. They get born every place. It's beautiful. It's dangerous, but they're phantom. So blocker or just fear. Most of your delays aren't real problems. They're just fear wearing a strategy hat. You don't need to eliminate risk. You just need to stop treating it like a red light. You need to start looking at risk. You don't need a whole risk department to come in and take a look at everything and detail. Use that access. Likelihood versus impact. And you can start prioritizing instead of stopping. So, the other thing is, how did you accidentally train your team to delay? This part stings a little bit. Um, oh, Warren, no snow, but it's still cold. You know, why don't you come to San Jose and visit? We can get a session, have some coffee or tea, or maybe some alcohol. Come on over, let's chat. Um, but here, let's talk about what really stings is that we created all these things knowingly or unknowingly. The team is not necessarily the problem. You might have accidentally started rewarding the wrong behavior. So here's three things that leaders do that train hesitation. Rewarding concerns over action. Every time somebody raises a hypothetical, you pause and address it. You're reinforcing the idea that caution equals competence. When the concerns get airtime and action gets scrutiny, hesitation becomes a habit. What can you do differently here? We talked about how to take that risk and start thinking about it. The other thing is that I talk to teams about is don't just come with a problem. Give me a couple solutions to pick from. The other thing that leaders do, they solve everything for the team. Your team knows you'll jump in and fix it. Why do they need to stretch? Why do they need to do anything? Leaders rescue way too quickly. So you accidentally teach people to wait and watch and escalate instead of engage and resolve. You're jumping in too quickly. And I see this all the time. Sometimes it comes when delegation comes. I'd rather do it myself because I can get it done faster than explaining it. Well, maybe that's true in the short term, but you're not fixing the problem and teaching people. The third one here is punishing failure more than inaction. When people are fear of getting it wrong, then then they do nothing, right? It becomes safer not to do anything at all. It becomes safer to bring up hesitation and things. You don't get bold ideas. You get careful silence and projects stuck in purgatory is what you get. You get projects that run late, that run long for risks that you could take care of down the line because you're not prioritizing. So this behavior starts to compound and builds, right? You start over checking everything. They start triple confirming before they move. You say, why can't anything get done? Why can't anybody take initiative? Well, that's because the way you acted, the what you were giving airtime has just backfired. I had this one exec who told me he was in the hallway past his CEO and suddenly was asked, who's the program manager for this? No email, no meeting, just in the hallway. And now your whole roadmap is on fire because people are afraid to speak up without a script, right? So what you really have is a group of people who are willing to stall. You wanted thinkers, you wanted problem solvers, but what you got is stallers. You accidentally built a team that's cautious, mail forwarders. Um, you see, I have this guy, let's call him Michael. He's our overworked senior leader. He's drowning in execution. The team can't move unless he's in the loop. It's not because they're unskilled, it's because they're trained for him to make the decision. Or another example, let's call her Sarah, who has strong ideas. She's learned unless every single detail is fully baked and wholly blessed, it won't land. So she holds back. You don't get her ideas. You don't get her brilliance. You get cautious competence. And a third person I like to pull out is David. He's trying to lead change. And every step he's met with a wall, a brick wall of, but what if? If you never done it that way, you're going to fly in resistance. He's just fighting the culture of stall. So, what I call leadership drift, because people here, it's not that they're not smart, it's not that they're not driven, it's that the systems that we built are unspoken for reactions and norms to pause, not push. So I see another comment down here. So Warren, you say leadership which pushes for quick and effective, big results, often communicated more subtle fashion, not to make mistakes and perform with perfection. This causes fear factors that I mentioned and yes, this is very true, right? We say, all the leaders many times, said in many meetings, yep, this is important. We must move this quickly. It is the corporate strategy for this year. We have KPIs on it, but don't fail. No failures allowed. Yes, so we say one thing, but we actually incentivize something else. This is another thing. We talk about collaboration in teams, and we want people to work together, and we say this out loud, but we incentivize something else, because when it comes to the yearly review, we measure on the individual, less on the team and how you react on the team. So we say one thing, incentivize another, and that's exactly what's happening here. Warren, that's great. Thank you. And again, it's not because your people aren't smart. It's not because they're not driven. We taught them this way. You taught them to stall. When you reward hesitation and punish bold moves, don't be surprised when the team waits for permission for everything. This is not risk management. This is leadership drift. So, what do you want to do differently? I'm going to give you three questions to start asking, right? You want speed? Here's three questions. What I have a lot of organizations do, they create a unblock cadence, a weekly unblock cadence where we'll get together every week and ask these three questions. What is actually stopping us? What are we overreacting to? And third, can we move forward even though it's imperfect? What's actually stopping us? What are we overreacting to? What can we move forward on, even if it's not perfect? This cadence isn't just a checklist, it's a cultural reset. You're retraining your team's reflexes. You're saying, we move forward here. We make calls. We don't wait for the stars to align. You want your team to step up, you need to start talking about and actually doing progress over perfection. In this case, this would give Sarah a way to be seen without playing it safe. I always talk about experiments. We think that if we do X, we're going to get Y. Well, what is the cheapest, fastest, shortest thing that we can do to prove or disprove that? It's still safe. It's not a failure. We're just proving or disproving the hypothesis. We don't have to go out and build a whole new software product to test something out. We can ask questions, right? We can go talk to our customers. David can drive change even though there's resistance to the culture when we do experiments. Michael can do stuff even though there's some trust and we're leading in chaos. So when you start doing this, you start changing the DNA. And I'm going to give you a few things here, and then we'll end with that. When you start doing this, you model imperfection in action, experiments. It's done better than perfect, right? People say that. Show it. Launch something a little bit messy. Make some decisions. Make it before it's bulletproof, right? The team takes its cues from you. Celebrate when we move forward, not just the wins. Create a space where we acknowledge people for moving through the friction, even though the outcome wasn't perfect, right? The message starts to become progress counts, perfection can wait. Coach the thinking. Number three, not just the task. Ask a lot of questions. When someone brings a blocker to you, what options have you already considered? I bet you anytime somebody brings you a blocker, they already thought about a few things. If you ask a few questions and dig in, you'll probably get some problem solving. And if you start shifting the conversation to that, you'll start getting your thinkers instead of stallers. Number four is decision making is a skill. It's a skill, not a privilege. You don't have to push it out to the boss, to the other department. Give your team a framework and permission to make calls. Teach them how to weigh risk and reward. You'll never scale to bigger things if you're the only one making the real decisions. Create a space for micro experiments. This is what I was talking before. Be more innovative. Try things out in small dosages. There's A/B testing processes, a small pilot. We say things all the time about, well, let's just try this out and see what happens. Let's run a pilot. These are experiments. I like the word experiment because it brings the whole scientific approach to it. Remember, maybe you were in fifth grade like I was, and you have to do a science fair thing with a poster board, and you put the hypothesis on top, the experiment you run, and then whether the experiment proved or disproved that hypothesis. Well, run those. Everything's an experiment. It allows you to move forward. It allows you to test things out, even though you don't have a perfect decision, right? Remember, cultures are not created by slogans. They are created by patterns. Build a pattern of your organization to remove the pause, remove the escalate, and build to make experiments, and you will find speed. You want high performance culture? Stop stalling on made up risks. Name the fear, decide anyway, and move on. This is how you start leading like a CEO. This is where it starts. Lead through the fear and don't let it lead you. You don't need a new org chart to start thinking like a CEO. It starts with a mindset. It's about risk. It's about ownership. It's about moving forward. Be a leader who kills the phantom blockers on site, who models momentum over perfection, and makes uncertainty survivable. So let's bring it home. Drop your blockers in the comments if you want to talk about your specific ones. I'll help you sort out real from ridiculous. Today's takeaway is most blockers aren't blockers. They're just fear in a trench coat. And your job is to avoid fear, isn't to avoid fear, it's to lead through it. Um, Call to action. I have a blog on this. I put it out on Tuesday. Your strategy isn't feeling, it's just being smothered by caution. DM me, message me if you would like a free strategy audit. We'll talk about your blocks and what you can do about it. And no, this is not a code for a sales call. This is free strategy session. Hit me up. It's yours. See you next week.